Welcome to part 2 of the 2016 FBR Ops Series. Today's session is Tech Talk, implementing the right technology at the right time for your franchisees. We have 3 more great panelists with us today to share some insights and best practices. Stan Friedman, the president of FRM Solutions, a franchise management software provider. Rebecca Monet, president and chief scientist of Zoracle Profiles, which provides assessment tools for franchise recruitment and support efforts. And Donnie Carr, the Director of Franchise Performance for the Christian Brothers Automotive franchise system. Panelists, welcome today, and once again, I'd like to introduce and hand over the microphone to FBR CEO Eric Seitz to lead today's discussion.
Thanks, Mike. Welcome back, everybody. I know it was an exciting session on Tuesday with vision planning for your franchisees, and now we're going to get into the nitty-gritties of technology. Before we get started, what I'd like to do is have each of our panelists, Stan, Rebecca, and Donnie, just take 30 seconds to give us a little background about you, your company, and your role related to technology. And Stan, we'll lead off with you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate the opportunity to join today and to help share with everybody some of the things that are beneficial to know about where technology is going. I'm the president of FRM Solutions. FRM is an acronym for Franchise Relationship Management. We basically center upon CRM and things relevant to the relationship between franchisors and franchisees for better collaboration, better communication, and real-time knowledge of where data is, what's going on in your life and in the world. I'm a 28-year veteran of franchising. I sometimes laughingly call myself a recovering franchisor. I've spent most of my career on the franchisor side of the business, and in an executive role in many different places, I've learned where the pain points are in the day-to-day world of being a franchisor, and that's kind of what we try to bring to our software platform, are user-centric solutions to the day-to-day requirements of running a franchise business and managing the relationships with prospective and existing franchisees.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Stan. I'm glad you could be here. I couldn't think of a more expert attendee or participant on today's call. Rebecca, can you give us a little background on your company and how you approach technology?
Absolutely. So I'm Rebecca Monet. I'm president and chief scientist behind a company called Zoracle Profiles. We provide franchise-specific solutions around the arena of psychographic assessments, a means to assess prospective franchisees for compatibility and a way to predict their performance. So I've spent 23 years in the franchise space focusing on researching, creating, and then ultimately validating various psychographic assessments. And honestly, I'm in the software business, Eric, by complete default. Our tools originally were pen and paper, and it evolved into software. So I have this love-hate relationship, like a lot of us, I'm sure, with technology. But I can also appreciate the challenges involved with a franchisor who's assessing technology needs in ways that they can empower their franchisees, and ultimately the goal is to increase unit-level profitability. So I hope I can bring something to the table from that perspective of being both in the world of technology and appreciating what you guys are going through day to day to help your franchisees.
Awesome, awesome. And I appreciate having a scientist on the call, so I know we'll get into a lot of the data behind technology and the psychology as well behind the technology. Donnie, how about a little bit of background on you and Christian Brothers Automotive?
Sure. Good afternoon, and thanks Franchise Business Review for hosting me on this panel today. I have been with Christian Brothers for almost 10 years now, seen the company grow. When I first started, we had 46 locations. We have close to 160 now, and I work in our operations department. And so our goal is to make sure that we're utilizing all types of technology to both communicate between franchisees, franchisor to franchisee, and then also to make sure we're bringing the best value possible to our customers. And so as the system is close to tripled in my time, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, and the kind of technology that we use in the systems or platforms that we use between us and our franchisees, and then also our franchisees to our customers. So Christian Brothers has been franchising since 1996, and we are a full-service automotive repair company, and we focus heavily on the customer service side and making sure that we can service all makes and models of vehicles.
Great, great. And Donnie, you bring up a great point. What I'd like to do is really focus. Whoop, let me on hold music there. There's all sorts of different technologies that we have in our systems, and really I put them into three different buckets as far as customer-centric, customer-facing technologies, everything from our website to apps you may use, that sort of thing, to franchisee-specific, franchisee-facing technologies that help the franchisees really manage their business. And then lastly, the franchisor technologies and what the franchisor really uses to manage their business as well. And that's a tricky one because that's where, there is a lot of crossover between that franchisor technology platform and the franchisees. So what I'd like to do is pop a poll question here. So our first poll question today is really related to your franchisor-centric technology. So you can all rate your current system as far as, again, these are your franchisor-centric platforms. So what you use to run your franchisor's business. And if you can take a few minutes just to give us a little rating of that. So it looks like we've got a lot of people here really in the average range of their technology. And a few poors, some goods, some very goods, and a few, the 13% there in the excellence, I give you credit for having a good platform. And now I want you to now think about your franchisee-centric technology, and as far as again, the software and the platforms that your franchisees may use in running their business. This may also cross over to some extent with your current platform that the franchisor uses, but really looking at what the franchisees are using to run their business on a day-to-day basis. This could be apps that they're using, not customer-centric apps, but just apps that they use to run their business and any other software and technology there. So take a few minutes. And Donnie, I want to kind of lead off the discussion with you and get some feedback from you on, really just timing around technology and how you approach looking at different technologies. Or do you see yourselves as really kind of a leader in the technology space, or more of a follower in the technology space?
So I would say that we are probably, when it comes to customer-facing technology, the automotive industry is not one that's leading. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of improvements to be made there. When it comes to communicating between franchisees and to franchisees, to be completely honest, I would say that we are a little bit more of a follower in just implementing that new software and then gaining the cost or paying for that new software as well. So definitely something we attempt to stay on top of. We've become much more aggressive in implementing those things, but historically it has not been one of our strongest suits. But in the past 2 or 3 years, we've really improved our processes in making sure that we're staying on top of new technology. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it's interesting because when we look at our research, franchisees definitely have a fairly poor opinion of the effectiveness of technology in the system, and the poll results here kind of reflect that as well. I mean, there's a lot of spread there in the results, but the majority saying average, 20% saying poor. It's very mixed bag, and that's what we see from the feedback we get from franchisees. It's one of the questions that gets rated the lowest in our survey. And I think that, and Rebecca kind of hit on it very early on, is, I think we all have a love-hate relationship with technology. And it's challenging to really determine, when is the right time to implement technology in your system, and do you want to be a leader and edge, or do you want to kind of wait and see and see what everybody else is doing and see if the technology is really the platform to go with? Stan, do you have any thoughts on determining the right time to implement technology, especially I know when we've got newer systems that are looking to compete with much bigger competitors? How do you find that balance?
Well, Eric, from my perspective, which is slightly skewed, but I would suggest that there's no better time than early to get a platform beneath you that you can grow into, even if you're an emerging brand. I can't tell you how many times I visit with executives of legacy brands that in the earlier days put systems in place that were proprietary. They had their own IT departments, and they were running hardware and software, and never contemplated that those platforms would have to one day support companies that grew to sizes that outstripped the ability of their IT platforms to support them. And they're always in a catch-up mode, just trying to keep things together. It's almost like putting your finger in the dam and trying to hold the water back. You never want to become one of those companies that grew so quickly, despite the fact that they didn't have the proper infrastructure in place to keep pace with the growth. And especially today, we're in a cloud-based world. I think it's a better thing for a franchisor to do to keep his focus on his core competencies, to keep his focus on those things that will help build sustainable growth and stay honed in on unit economics, than to be worrying about technology and trying to build things yourself that out of the box are already there and available and enable you to spend more time doing what you should do. And as technology changes, you're not constantly struggling to update systems and update platforms and hardware. You don't have to make that part of your life. You can just continue to do what you do best and let the cloud take care of the rest for you.
That's great. I love the cloud analogy, and I keep looking up into the sky thinking about where all the servers are up there.
Yeah, but it's a different world. I mean, years ago that wasn't an option. So you had to have a significant number of people, resource of dollars and commitment of people to build the technology that you needed for your business. And look, it's a changed world, and franchisors today can afford the out-of-the-box solutions that are available. Barriers to entry will not be price. So if you begin with the end in mind and stay focused on consistent growth and having tools in place that will enable your franchisees to be as successful as possible, you don't become an impediment to them executing and implementing. You're giving them the very best of what's out there to work with, and you're running your business the same way. You and your teams have constant communication, real-time data, and you can let technology do things for you on autoresponders and on status changes that used to take people to communicate. Your people can stay focused on the important stuff now and let the mundane be managed by software.
Right. Rebecca, I know you have a lot to say on the topic of determining the right time of implementing technology, and I'm not seeing the slides right now. I don't know if we're having a technical difficulty or not, and I don't know if everybody else is, or Rebecca, if you can see the slides. But you want to share some of your thoughts on that? There we go.
Yes, I'd love to. The slide is up. So it's interesting because it's nice to be a scientist and be sort of unbiased, because what Donnie pointed out is Christian Brothers, which is an excellent example of a well-run franchise system, are not typically early adopters. And then we have Stan here saying the sooner you get technology implemented, the more effective you become as a franchise, and ultimately helping your franchisee being more profitable. So for me, it's just about research, right? And a couple of years ago, we did some research in tandem with FBR, looking at several factors, including the demands that the franchisees are exerting on franchise systems. And just as Stan pointed out, the demands for technology from the franchisee in the blue markers that you see is high on the front end. Early stage franchisors, what we call stage 1, 2, and 3 franchise systems, have incredible demands from their franchisees asking for ways to be more effective and to be more efficient. And over time, those demands from the franchisee begin to go down as a franchisor grows and evolves into stage 3 and stage 4 and stage 5. But the early stage franchise systems are getting a lot of pressure from their franchisees to have some technologies to solve those problems. To me, the bigger question is, what does the technology solve? And it solves a ton of problems, everything from marketing issues that franchisees are going to have, to operational issues to maximize their profits, to the customer service issues that we're having to handle, all the way down to an area that's a little more tenuous, and that's the training and HR factors that franchisees have. And franchisors daily have to consider how they can bring technology on to help a franchisee be efficient and effective in those areas. And we can see from this slide, Eric, and you remember this slide because I shared it, we shared it a couple of years ago, that the influence changes based on the stage of growth of that franchisor. And if I recall, one of the things that you brought up to me, because you're more knowledgeable than I am about these things, is the time that the franchisor has the least resources, we have the highest demand for technology. So we have to sort of pay attention to where those demands are and address them when and only when those needs need to be handled. Those marketing needs need to be handled. Those operational needs need to be handled. Those training and support needs, those customer service needs. But you had some very strong opinions on that, Eric, from what I, to me this was just data.
Yeah. Well, it is that, it's the chicken and the egg thing, and obviously, newer franchise systems are, or at least in their franchisees, feel they need that technology, or, because they can't compete necessarily with the bigger brands on, brand recognition and some of the marketing programs that they have and the operational systems. And as Stan mentioned, because of the cloud, the cost of technology has come down so much that it really has lowered the playing field in a lot of areas. Not all areas, but certainly a lot of areas where, a small startup now can have equal technology to some of the larger players of the world, where it used to just be, only the biggest companies could have the best software and the best platforms out there. Donnie, I want to go to you and get the franchisor perspective, and hearing what you've just heard from Stan and Rebecca. How do you approach really evaluating and selecting new technology, and it could be the franchisee's operating platform or in your own internal platform. I mean, at what point how bad, I guess, is the pain before you look at a solution? When you stop using Excel spreadsheets and move to something a little bit more advanced than that, and just how do you approach that evaluation process?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that we look at is what are our franchisees telling us? What are their complaints and concerns with what we're doing or the communication that we're having? and then the other option is what is the cost to us, and what value does it bring to the system as a whole. And so when we look at those elements and we say, okay, this is one of the biggest concerns that we are having or struggles that we're having, we're going to go out into the market and say, hey, what solutions are there for these types of problems? And then once we look at those, we say, okay, how easy is it going to be for our franchisee to use and implement? How easy is it going to be for us to manage and implement? And then at the end of the day, is it going to solve the problem that we originally set out to fix? And so that's kind of the process that we're looking at. And then I think the other thing is just constantly having the mindset of, hey, we can do this better than we're doing it now. And so one of my favorite things about working at Christian Brothers Automotive is I don't feel like we feel that we've arrived in any area, whether it be at the franchisor level or the franchisee level. We are always looking for something to improve upon the systems that we have, but we just want to focus on which is going to be the most impactful on our business.
Great. Stan, you want to give us a little insight as far as how you advise? And again, I know you're primarily dealing with companies on the franchise side platforms, but how they go about evaluating and selecting platforms.
Well, I think that the smaller companies sometimes think that it's impossible to afford some tools like those that are available today. And as I said earlier, it really isn't. The cost is far greater to an emerging franchisor for putting this off than it is for beginning with the end in mind. And a perfect example, Eric, that I like to use is, right on the franchise development side, if you've got a candidate that's looking at your brand, odds are they're looking at 3 or 4 others in your competitive set as well. We know nobody just looks at a single brand and makes a decision. So if 3 or 4 companies in a competitive set are treating candidates to an experience in learning about their opportunities, and 2 or 3 of them are telling them, I'll shoot you an email with a PDF, or go into a Dropbox and you can pull this down, or someone else is providing them with a professional experience that's guiding them along a self-directed path of discovery. The meta message would be, to me, if I were the candidate, wow, look at this company and the tools that they provide for me to even learn about them, much less operate within their environment. If they've got all this available to teach me what it's like to be a franchisee, I can't wait to see what type of experience I'm going to have with them when I become a franchisee. Franchisors, you're asking for prospective franchisees to invest life savings into your systems and into your programs and into your proven methodologies. And if you're not delivering an experience to them that demonstrates professional tools, you're sending a very negative meta message from the onset. 3 or 4 in the competitive set, and one may be doing that in a way that's consistent with using these kinds of tools, and the other 3 might be sending a negative message to their prospects without even realizing that they're doing it. There's no time too soon to be able to fix that and then carry that experience of learning about your brand into systems that the now existing franchisee will benefit from by furthering their exposure to the things that you're going to teach them as they become a new franchisee on a platform that's going to continue to communicate and collaborate in ways that maximize their potential for success.
Right. Right. Rebecca, I want to step back here for a minute. There was a little confusion, I guess, on the last slide. Just if you could go into a little bit more detail as to the gap here that we see between top-performing franchisees and all franchisees in the various areas of expertise.
Sure, we did kind of zip by this, didn't we? So this research was done on 580 top-performing franchisees in 43 different franchise companies. And then we also looked at 1,500 franchisees with random levels of performance, low performers, mid performers, and of course high performers. And what you're looking at here is top performers in terms of the demands that they are exerting and how satisfied or not satisfied they are with various things. The technology you're providing, the marketing that you're providing, the operational systems and procedures you're providing, and of course your training and support. So the biggest thing to note here is those that are doing well exert less demands on you in terms of expecting certain things, whether it's marketing or operational or support or even technology for that matter, versus folks that are mid and low performers and you're just part of a bigger pot. So in fact, if we look at it, the training and support to train mid and low performers is a minimum of 140% higher in terms of the resources you have to put out to train and support a average or low performing franchisee. Same in the world of technology. The lower performers require more to offload the areas where they're not skilled, offload the areas where they're not taking initiative on their own. So we as franchisors frequently take those responsibilities on, thus increasing the energy that we're putting out to support them in those areas. So that's what this slide is about. And of course the encouragement here is to do everything possible to make your franchisees perform well.
So I mean, you mentioned obviously the changing needs based on the age of the system and whether it's a new franchisor or a more established franchisor. How do those same needs change as franchisees change and the changing needs of the thanks for the slide, Mike, franchisee competencies, and how does that tie into evaluating and selecting the right technologies, I guess?
Well, and my guess is Donnie can address this really well too, and looking at what your franchisees are capable of from a core competencies perspective. Our research just shows that a franchisee's competencies evolve and change through various stages of growth. Franchisors on the front end are oftentimes attracting franchisees that have very strong sales and marketing skills. Those early stage franchisors just are attracting those types of individuals, people that are comfortable where there's not strong brand recognition just yet. And then as the system evolves, the hunter instinct begins to drop, and the demand on the franchisor to now provide more and more marketing and more sales support and more customer service support begins to go up. So the evolution of the system alone and who we are attracting changes. I mean, the individual that's attracted to a highly established empire type of business is different than someone who's an early stage franchisor that's attracting a franchisee for that. So this slide just basically shows how those competencies evolve. And as Donnie pointed out, we want to look at where we can have the biggest impact. Here we are at such and such stage of growth. Our franchisees lack in a particular area of competency. If we're a stage 3 franchise system, we're going to be looking at providing services that can help operationally. We're seeing that those core competencies need to be addressed. So we're going to be bringing in technology that helps them have some return on investment that makes them more efficient. So technology we need to address based on our stage of growth. We need it from day one, but it also evolves and changes as the system evolves and changes, and as the competencies of that franchisee changes as he or she grows with you.
And Donnie, I mean, that obviously brings up a great point of, I mean, you've grown, you've seen Christian Brothers grow significantly over the years, and the needs of the organization change as well as the needs of the franchisee because of that growth. But then you also have, as we talked about the other day, the life cycle of each of your individual franchisees, from the newbies to the ones that think they know it all, to the seasoned veterans that are into the whole we stage where they understand the value of the franchisor and their role. how do you balance all of that in, again, evaluating the various needs of both the organization and the franchisees at those different stages of growth?
Yeah, so one of the challenges is I think the biggest is communication that you run into all the time. And so when we first started, there was 45 locations, and you wanted to communicate a message. Getting a hold of or contacting those 45 franchisees was very simple, very easy. And so as you grow, those types of things, you are not able to handhold as much as you could originally. And so that's where some of these advanced technologies really come into play, whether it's, a technology we implemented a couple of years ago was smart recruiters, which is where that is compiling all of the applicants for our franchisees and pulling that into one database and making sure we can all communicate through those things. And I think Rebecca pointed out a great point of the life cycle of the franchisee is through the stage of growth of the franchise and also through their stage in their franchise. So when they first start out, they have to be very marketing and sales driven, pulling in those customers, and as their franchise grows, they have to begin to focus on the operational and training and assisting their team in doing what they were doing by themselves before. And so what technologies and training can we use to help facilitate their learning curve in those areas? So does that help answer your question, Eric?
Yeah, no, I think it does. And, I guess one of the things I have struggled with as a business owner, I know many business owners struggle with, is when you're evaluating technology, regardless of what the platform may be, is, how important is it to look at it thinking I'm going to invest in this tool and it needs to last 10, 15, 20 years versus, we need this tool today, and if we have to replace it with something else next week, that's fine. How much of that thought, I know obviously change is a huge part of any franchise organization, but when you're leading a group of franchisees and you don't want to obviously be changing things on them constantly, I don't know how much that weighs into your decision process.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So, for instance, we've been looking at new point-of-sale software for probably, 7 years now, and we understand the weight and the amount of time that it will take to retrain all of our sales teams and all of our franchisees on that software. So that's a decision that we're going to take much slower. We're going to be much more process-oriented, and we're going to make sure that we have a much longer solution versus a recruiting software that our franchisees use. They don't use it every day, but it's something that's very beneficial to their business. We needed to get something implemented, and so we did that quicker because we needed a product and a solution, but we were more comfortable that, hey, if something new comes out in a year or two that's better than this, we're okay with then making a change. So I think a big part of it is what is the cost to make the change to the new software, and then how difficult is it going to be to retrain and re-educate our franchisees and their teams on that new software.
And as part of that process, do you involve franchisees throughout that process? Where I guess, how much do you involve your franchisees in that evaluation process, and what does that look like within your organization?
Sure. So we have a franchisee IT steering committee, which is made up of 12 franchisees. And so the great thing about our system is they come from all diverse backgrounds. And so we have a handful, a dozen franchisees that have actually come from some IT backgrounds. And so we ask them to be a part of the process. And so we're getting buy-in from them. We're getting to use some of their expertise on the new systems we use. And then also, when we've narrowed it down to a couple of products, we're going to be asking them and even a couple of our corporate stores to beta test and try out this new software before we make a change. And it's definitely beneficial to us when we can talk to other franchisees and say, well, franchisee X, Jim was involved in this process, and here's some of the things that he said will be beneficial in the business for you. So.
Yeah, great. Stan, I know you're more involved on the franchisor operating platform side of things. I'm curious how often franchisors actually involve franchisees in that process of evaluating their operating platform, or is it just strictly a franchisor decision?
It's pretty much more a franchisor decision, Eric, in that the tools that are provided by a company like mine are designed to help the franchisor manage the relationship with his franchisees. So it's not too likely that he's going to be like asking your kids, what's the best thing I should use to keep you from doing the things you might want to do differently? Not a good way to go.
It's a good analogy.
But I have seen some companies that have high levels of trust with members of their franchise community that do come from backgrounds that may have had skill sets that were employed in past lives that can be beneficial for the good of the entire organization. So they may bring somebody in from the franchisee community that has skill sets in that area and just ask them to kick the tires, sit in on a demo, tell them what they see about this that's better than anything else they've ever seen, or what might be different or could be improved if a customization might be added to the out-of-the-box solution. I've seen that happen, but more often than not, I think you're going to find that more in the environment that Donnie described than you will in a franchisor management decision over the entire brand.
Right. And Rebecca, I know you kind of go on both sides, franchisor and franchisee. I mean, what are your thoughts as far as involving franchisees in that decision process of the technology?
I think it's a brilliant idea. We assess franchisees and prospective franchisees, and most of our franchisor clients do involve their higher performing franchisees to give them feedback regarding our tools. So that's beneficial to us. It's beneficial to the franchisor to have good feedback. I mean, we're in a partnership as a franchisor and a franchisee. So it's whenever it's possible, it's nice to have the franchisee to give some feedback. Our tool also randomly sends out a request for the franchisee or the prospective franchisee to give us feedback, how we can make our tool more user-friendly. If there's a question about a word or a question about a question, then we get that feedback and we can make corrections and do what's necessary to make that user experience more powerful and on our end, effortless. Nobody likes to take tests, so
sure.
We want to make it as simple as possible.
Makes sense. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I know we've been talking pretty high level, but so much happens negatively when new technologies are rolled out. You just hear these horror stories of things that just went terribly wrong, and I don't know if there's ever any way to avoid those or not. Certainly there's things you can do to better prepare for situations like that. Donnie, I guess I'll start with you and just say, when you're rolling out a new technology to your franchisees, how do you support that process? And I mean, aside from, I guess, just the, launch of it and getting that initial buy-in, there's also just the adaptation process. I know so many of our clients have launched a new tool and spent millions of dollars on it to just not even have their franchisees use it. So how do you go about, that initial rollout of something new and getting that adaptation?
Yeah, so Eric, we actually recently just launched a new forum, and it's gone over very well so far. But the biggest reason for that is because our old forum we had for so long and was so terrible that they were very excited to have something new. So One suggestion is to wait a really long time, and then it's like the software's real that they can't
like
be upset. But obviously that's not always the best of ideas. So one of the things that we've done is we've created an adoption process that's a little bit slower. And so we're going to give our franchisees a longer period of time to begin using the software. And what we'd like to do is teach them through that software when it becomes a need. So when it's something that, hey, this can be beneficial for you, our coaches and our ops team and others on the team here at the home office are going to be pushing you towards that direction of the benefits it can have for their business. And then through that longer process as well, when you get some franchisees bought in, we're going to leverage their use of the product and the value that it's brought to them with other franchisees. So if I'm speaking to someone and they say, I don't really like this, I can say, well, franchisee Norman over here or franchisee Sue has done a great job. They felt like it's brought in great value to them. Can I have them call you and walk you through some of the benefits of it? So through extending the period of time with the rollout and them not having to necessarily implement immediately, we feel like that's softened it. Because franchisees, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, and they don't like change. They don't like to be told what to do. And so eventually, if you can make it their idea and beneficial to them, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. We've actually never heard that before, that franchisees don't like to be told what to do. So Stan, I'll go back to you as far as adoption. More obviously on the franchisor side of things, but I know it's hard a lot of times even to get employees, the franchisor, to learn new technologies. And so how do you go about supporting those rollouts and helping clients, use the full capacity of the technology that they've purchased?
To the point that Donnie made, and I think that it's spot on, if you do what you do when you try to get somebody to do what you want them to do because it's good for you, you're going to find lower adoption rates. When you show benefit to them and how time is going to be freed up from tasks that they don't like doing or that are just horribly difficult to do, and you can lift the load of that off of someone's plate and say you're not going to have to do that manually anymore. It's not a push of a rock up a hill now, and now you're pushing it down. So it's the same thing. If you get franchisees using certain portions of our platform, if there's royalty billing, and it used to be that an ops person had to go out and pound someone over the head to get their P&Ls weekly or monthly because the home office wants them. Franchisees' attitude is pound sand. There's nothing in it for me. But if you go to that same franchisee and say, I can show you a benefit of submitting your P&Ls through the system on a timely basis, because now you can see the P&Ls in an aggregate of all of this other brand, all of the other companies in the brand, all the other franchisees, and compare how you're doing against the entire system as a whole. Look at all that business intelligence that's coming your way. The benefit of you turning in your numbers now isn't something that anyone's having to pound you over the head to get anymore. You're looking forward to seeing the aggregated information, which wouldn't be aggregated, would it, had you not submitted yours on time? So showing benefit instead of just telling someone what's in it for you as the czar, whether it's technology or anything, it's making it important to them. iPhone comes out with new releases and doesn't have to beg people to take them. They line up to get them because they want them. And so it's just a paradigm shift in how you approach the communications between corporate and home office, and showing benefit for something. And again, to Donnie's point, doing it in a staged timeline, getting some champions, internal champions, that are praising the changes in their lives because of these implementations that have taken place, will cause others in the organization to want more of that too.
Now I'm going to go back to our scientist and ask Rebecca for a little perspective on what you think about rolling out new technologies and how that impacts systems and the best ways to approach that.
Well, first I want to address franchisee norm. Don, I was giggling. It's a good thing I had my mic on mute because I frequently call my guy the nerdy Ned because there are folks that are better at embracing technology or things that we're rolling out, and some are not so good. But the point that Stan made and Donnie made, I think really needs to be heard in that when we roll this out, what is the value and benefit to the franchisee, and how do we communicate that in such a way that it becomes something they're excited about and they're ready to stand in line for. There's always going to be early adopters. There's always going to be folks that push back. But when we show the value, we show the benefit, one is much more receptive to change when they can see there's a reason for it, and the reason is that it's going to benefit them. So that would be my take on that. And never mind, Eric, there's just certain people that love technology and certain people that don't, and there's different ways to approach each.
Are you a lover of technology, or are you a hater of technology yourself personally?
I have a love-hate. I'm in the software business. You know, I'm daily designing user interface and ways to make this, and so, but it's by default. I hate it, but I love what it does for our franchisees. I love what it does for our franchisors. I like the result of it. Do I like technology? No, but I like the results, which is exactly what Stan was saying and Don was saying. This gets us a place that we need to go. And so, therefore, I'm going to embrace it because it's going to get me there.
Right. Eric, you know, I would almost suggest that we just replace the word technology and say, you know, and this happened. I took a road trip with somebody on my team that's on the tech side of the business. We were renting a car, and the rental agent said, "What business are you guys in?" And the project manager that was with me said, "Well, we're in technology." And I said, you know, we're in franchising. And then we kind of looked at each other, and as we drove away, I said, you know, we were both wrong. We're in relationship business, and that's the business we're in. The technology is just a vehicle. It's like language. It's a way to get the relationships working, and it's a tool that's required in today's world to do it. But stay focused on the business we're really in. I don't care who we are in this business, whether we're suppliers, franchisees, or franchisors. The one common denominator is we're in franchising, and franchising is relationships, and it's not an either-or thing. The ability, the empowerment to make the relationships work are the things that you can go out and find solutions out there that are available. Call it technology, and it's an ugly thing. Call it a solution to a relationship need. It's a good thing. So we just have to have a paradigm shift in how we view it, and it gets easier.
I like it. I like it. On that note, Donnie, I want to ask you, with as far as franchisees go, obviously you do have your early adopters, and a lot of times you have those that don't adopt at all. How do you manage that franchisee pushback when you're coming out with a new relationship, not a new technology, but when you're trying to sell them on that relationship and they're pushing back? How do you sell that in your organization, or what advice, I guess, would you have for our audience?
Yeah, so if they're not understanding or seeing the benefit, like Stan and Rebecca mentioned, if they're not understanding or seeing the benefit that it's going to bring to their business, I think you got to walk even farther backwards from there, and you have to get on the same page of what are they trying to accomplish and what are they trying to do through their business. And so, to me, it's you got to get to the very core of why is it do they not want to implement or put this new relationship or technology into their business. And if we can work together to solve that hurdle or that issue that they're having with this new technology, then we're going to try and do that. And so if it's my guys just won't do this, they're not interested. Okay, great. Can I sit down and speak with them together? Can we all just talk through the benefits of this and how it can bring value to them as well? And so I think when you have some of those people that are opposed, is if you can get a second voice in there, another franchisee, and that still doesn't work, is you really got to get to the core root of what is causing them to not want to implement this new technology. And if you can get them to articulate that and work through a resolution together, I think hopefully you'll be successful. Otherwise, potentially just have someone that is not bought into the system or being better.
Right. Well, I mean, Stan made an excellent point. I mean, it is we're in the relationship business, and what we've seen a lot in many cases of technology in various areas is a lot of times the franchisee, and we'll get into this with our scientists to get the inside scoop on this from a psychological perspective, but a lot of times franchisees view new technologies not as the franchisor helping them grow their business, but more of, hey, this is just another way Big Brother is going to watch and make sure I'm doing the right things, whether it's measuring, customer satisfaction, whether it's financial dashboards or what have you. A lot of times franchisees take the perspective of, they're saying this is to help me manage my business better, but it's really about helping the franchisor manage me better. And I'd like to hear each of you, and we'll start with Donnie. Like, how do you approach, when you have a franchisee that's taking that position, how do you approach that specifically?
Yeah, so to me, obviously that's a very emotional response, right? Because they feel that you are trying to be Big Brother and you're trying to watch over their shoulder. And so what is the root of that feeling? And clearly I have mistreated, misspoken, or there has been something that has caused them to feel that way in the past. And so if we can get past that feeling or that emotion, then that's what I'm going to try and do. And maybe it's as simple as I need to apologize for something that they feel has been Big Brotherish in the past, and walk away from that perspective of the emotion of the decision and get to the logical side, which is not always easy. And so it might not be on that one phone call or that one conversation, but if you can begin working towards that and then revisit again later. But there has to be something at the core of that emotion that's having them feel or respond in that manner.
Rebecca, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, as far as franchisees feeling that this is just one more tool for the franchisor to watch my business. I mean, do you run into that a lot?
Yes. That definitely happens, and there's a certain segment of the population we call the belongers, and as Donnie pointed out, that are making decisions from emotions, or their behavior is coming from emotions. But behind that is indeed a value set. So these belongers are all about relationship and security and dependability and consistency. They are anti technology in general. They are high-touch relationship types of folks. So when you push technology out to them, for them it's one more thing that you're doing. And then the guy that we call the emulator, he's typically a guy that likes innovation, likes technology, is a trendsetter, but he also likes things like his independence, he likes autonomy, he likes flexibility, and the last thing he wants is a franchisor breathing down his neck. So he might perceive that this technology that we are rolling out to help them be more effective and more profitable is just another means for us as franchisors to control his every move, when that's not what we want. And so Donnie's point of addressing both of these types, the technology non-nerd and the emulator who is don't touch my business, stay away from me, is to address those fears, those concerns, and bring it to the forefront and begin to show them they can have what they want. And this is just another means to help them get where they are. But Donnie's point is correct. Oftentimes the trigger, anytime you put something that's cold or appears to be cold, like technology out there, it's going to trigger both of these types in a way that they push back. One from not liking technology, and the other one from not wanting to be controlled.
Stan, what are you, as someone who works for, has a company that provides software that does provide some Big Brother aspects to it. What is your approach, I guess, to your client and how to soften that perspective?
Well, I could take another whole hour on this, Eric, but we don't have that time. I will say this. All of this stems back to something that has little to do with technology unless you utilize technology as part of your franchise development selection process. This all goes back to begin with the end in mind. Who are you selecting? You're talking about here is culture, and you're talking about trust, and you're talking about the balance between a business model that's built on documents, but it's dependent on trust. And so if you don't have a trustworthy environment, you're always going to have that conspiracy theorist that thinks you're trying to do the Big Brother thing. But if you've got like-minded people that you've brought into an organization that is going to share vision, values, and ethics with both the franchisor as well as the existing franchisees that preceded him, the likelihood is that you're making better selection decisions and you're going to run into fewer of those kinds of cultural problems down the road. A tool like Rebecca's is the perfect mechanism for trying to peel back the onion and see who it is you're getting and what drives them and what motivates them and how they're going to perform based on the sciences that are reviewed in their selection process. And when you get enough people that you can learn from tools like Rebecca's tool at Zoracle that says these are the kinds of people that succeed in our environment and will flourish and grow and prosper, then you start looking for more people like those people. And then as you develop years and years of database of people that you've talked to who may or may not have even become franchisees, you can take your old database and instead of just recycling old leads and trying to regenerate something, you can run those data points through machine learning, which is something, if you've not heard of, look it up. Machine learning is kind of creepy, Eric. It is a little bit of a Big Brother thing because you can gain information you can create algorithms that will look at what are the high points of all the people you've talked to that you should be looking for more people like that. Where are your highest performers as a whole? What kind of points of commonality do they have with others that you might want to select looking for more of the same things? Or who are some of your low performers and what do you see in them that you'd look for in candidates and say, nope, don't need more of that because when I want to do adaptation of something new, that's going to be the guy who's going to rear his ugly head and say, I don't want to do that, you're just being Big Brother. You can predict some of these things and technology can help do it, but I would submit to you that culture has an awful lot to do with building and gaining and earning trust with your community. And those are trust questions that you're asking that come out of culture, to my way of thinking.
Yeah, no, you're right on. It's funny because that ties back to my original question about, especially for newer systems that are, trying to evaluate, if I've only got $100,000 to spend and I've got recruitment needs and marketing needs and technology needs, where do I spend that money? And I know, Stan, you said, you're an early adopter kind of guy. I know we've worked with a lot of clients that have invested in franchisor operating platforms as well as franchisee operating platforms. Not so much, they needed it to manage their business better, but they actually invested in it as a recruitment tool. so that they could show candidates exactly the technology that would be used in the system when they became franchisees. So I think that's a very interesting, I mean, when you start to show candidates the technologies that are being used in your organization, that, one, you can see how they react to it, but it also sets that expectation up front that, this is what we use, this is all the information we collect, this is, so it does help in that regard. Just
and Eric,
quickly,
those
go ahead.
I was going to just suggest that those early stage companies, for a lot less money than it would cost to add to your headcount and bring on another person on the executive level in your team, systems like these, with a one-time investment of a microcosm of a new hire, will put hours more back into your bucket of things that you can do on your bucket list and have the time to do, because you're not dealing with manual labor all the time in places where technology can do it for you.
Right, exactly. So one of the things that happens a lot in technology is the tool itself is fine, but the support and the service behind it isn't so good. And we hear that a lot from franchisees, again, that whatever vendor's providing whatever technology, isn't providing what they need. It may be training related, it might just be support if something's not working correctly. Stan, what's your opinion, just quickly, on, from a support level, do you see franchisors trying to do that more in-house as an ideal situation, or do you see that really where they lean more on their vendors that are the experts in that area?
I see a little bit of both. In our world, we always look for somebody who's a power user in whatever portion of the platform they're using from FRM. We'd like to train the trainer kind of approach, and then we've got knowledge base available, videos available, and we've got premier support for those that want someone to hold hands and take them through things. I think communication is key, though. Things are going to break in technology. Look, software is going to break. How you manage that when it does is what you want to be gauged in and have your merits viewed on, not the fact that the software is going to work or not. Because it's mechanical, and like anything else, it's going to have its downtimes. But you have to communicate, and communication is key. And whether you're doing it internally with a help desk, or if you're doing it outside with your vendors, the need for instant gratification is always there. So let people be heard and respond to them. Even if the news you're giving them isn't what they want to hear, you go a much further distance just communicating, and working through how you triage those things is going to go a long way toward maintaining longer, more profitable relationships.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting. I'm actually working on a project right now for a QSR client. And again, this is one of those little things that you never even think about when you take on a new technology, but they had a technology that they were using in their drive-through that was a disaster. And it was a West Coast company that was supporting it. I won't throw anybody under the bus. But most of their franchisees were East Coast. And all their service or support calls got returned to the franchisee right around noon the next day. And so you've got a busy franchisee in the middle of the lunch rush hour at their QSR restaurant, and that's when the service provider decides to call it back. And obviously that does, and again, it's little things like that where, if the service provider doesn't really understand your business, that's not going to fly. So, you really got to take that into account. Donnie, how do you guys approach just the support part? I mean, do you lean on your vendors, or do you try and have experts in each of your technology platforms in-house? How does that work?
Yeah, great question, Eric. So if we are going to ask our franchisees to implement a new technology into their businesses, we're going to say that it's going to bring them value and benefit. And so we feel that if we're going to make that statement, we need to stand behind that product. And so one of the ways that we can do that is be the first line of defense. And so we basically tell our franchisees questions or concerns or issues that they have you may call us first, and we will do our best to resolve that issue. And so make sure that our team is educated on fixing those minor issues, things that we can handle, and then worst case from there, we will escalate it to the actual vendor to support that technology.
Great, great. So one of the biggest concerns I guess I have of technology, and I know many business owners do, is just the ROI. And there's a lot of soft, fuzzy things that people use to look at ROI. But at the end of the day, are each of you or your clients, really doing a hard analysis of, this is what it costs us, this is what we're getting in return, really calculating that ROI out. Rebecca, you're the scientist in the room. How do your clients go about, or how do you make the case of ROI to your clients, and how do you see them justifying that in their own mind?
I got to tell you, we're very, very fortunate because the argument around selection of the right franchisee, someone that's compatible, someone who's going to perform well, is just an acceptable argument that someone who performs better is ultimately someone who's going to cost us as a franchisor less to support. They're also going to be more profitable, which gives us more royalty in the coffers. So it's kind of a known, so we don't even have to argue the point. So we're lucky in our arena. But many of our franchisors do track it. So they, based on our software, then here's a prospective franchisee. We're comparing that prospective franchisee to the top performers within your franchise system. The software is franchise specific. It's not an off-the-shelf, employee assessment. And then we can track it going down the road. How fast did this franchisee ramp up compared to others? How well are they validating? How satisfied are they? What are they costing us in terms of support and training? Did we have more or less litigation with this individual versus that individual based on the feedback we got from the software that says this person's an 80% fit versus a 92% fit? So our franchisors do track that, the ROI. Sometimes they share it with us, sometimes they don't. But in the end, it's an acceptable argument that you choose the right franchisee, you choose the right solution, you're going to have return on investment.
Right, right. Stan, how about you? What's your approach to, proving out that ROI for clients?
Well, I think it's just like I would suggest that a prospective franchisee goes through a similar exercise in making a decision in favor of acquiring a franchise. We should call it the old Ben Franklin clause. Just put a line down the center of a yellow pad and look at all the things that you get on one side, and then look what you pay for it on the other. And if the right side of the page hits a tipping point that's higher than the value you're getting on the left, you're probably in the wrong place. And you shouldn't do this. If you're buying a franchise, you shouldn't do that if you're looking at solutions. But when you look at all the solutions that a total life cycle tool like ours provides for the management of prospects all the way through the existing life cycle, just cradle to grave, if you look at all the things that you can gain from tools like this, and then look at how little it costs to both acquire it and build it, and then to monthly support and operate it, it becomes, as Rebecca said, pretty difficult to argue with the value proposition that we deliver. I guess the best proof of that is I don't have long-term contracts with anyone. Anyone can leave me on 30 days notice, but nobody goes. So to me,
that's where the rubber meets the road.
The best validation in the world is that. And the fact is, for different reasons, different people find the values that they are looking for. But in anything that you do in technology, there shouldn't be a cost. The only cost should be the high cost, should be non-implementation, not moving forward and improving your brand. Anyone who's afraid of franchisor, or any franchisor who's afraid of franchisees who are going to resist change, and that's your reason for not doing it, the tail is wagging the dog. A responsible franchisor is not a static moment in time. It's a moving dynamic, and it's constantly going to change and evolve. and franchisees should embrace the fact that they've got a franchisor who's not sitting back on his laurels of what worked yesterday. You know, at the pace the world is moving today, it's not your dad's old Buick. And if you keep doing what you did yesterday, you're going to get results different than the ones you're looking for tomorrow, and it's going to become very evident that you've been left behind because you got lazy, or you just thought it might be a better idea to wait a little longer. It's not a good way to go.
Right. Donnie, I know obviously within any franchise system, there's certain technologies that are mandated that everybody has to use, and then there's other things that are, you know, more optional. And, you know, again, when you go back to that ROI, and one of our audience members asked the question of, you know, if you could use a specific example of something that you measured the specific ROI on, or you know, how you went about doing that. When you look at doing that within your system and rolling things out to franchisees and what's mandated, what's optional, how much of a case study or a pilot do you do showing the actual ROI of this technology to the franchisee and putting more money in their pocket or helping them reduce costs in some way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. And specifically, when we are implementing new technology, a lot of the things is what is the value of your time, and how much less will you now have to spend on this product or this software. Now that we've implemented new technology, are you spending less time? And so what's the cost of the new technology, and how much time are you spending? And I guess I would say, when trying to look for a specific example of something that we implemented, and then we looked at the measurable, and so recently we have started tracking our NPS score, Net Promoter Score, for customer service. And so when we started doing that, our score was 78%, and since then we are now at 82%. And so over the past year and a half, when we began tracking that number and making it measurable, we have seen the improvement in that service score. And so that's one example I would say. And then I know a little while back in 2012 at the home office, we implemented a software called QVinci, which is compiles all of our databases, all of our P&Ls, and we've looked at the amount of time that saved our team from having to pull that information by hand. So I hope that answers your question. Several of the smaller things that we've done on a store level, it's a little bit tougher to tell, just because we're normally not just implementing one thing, and the businesses are growing. And so how much of that is the natural growth of the business, and how much of that is the new tablet system for courtesy inspections that we installed. And so there's a little bit of a balance there of what is the true impact. And so it is a little bit tougher for us to measure that.
Right, right. So, Donnie, when you look back over the last, say, year, 18 months, and different technologies that you've implemented, what's your favorite? What's the most effective tool that your franchisees are now using that you wish you could get more tools like it?
Yeah, I think probably, you know, I joked about it earlier, but our forum previously was not good at all. It was not a great communication tool, and we have just rolled that out, and it's already begun to bear some fruit, just in making sure that the franchisor and the franchisee are on the same page. And there's a lot of new tools and a lot of great ways to communicate through video, through messaging, direct messaging. And so I would say that's been the biggest thing, because Christian Brothers has had a tough time with communication, and we just want to make sure we over-communicate anything and everything. And so the opportunity to implement that, have our franchisees more on board and in line with everyone's vision has probably been my favorite.
Great, great. Rebecca and Stan, I want to ask you, too, that question. Besides your own technologies, what do you see in the franchise marketplace, or just in the business marketplace, that you think is the coolest, most effective piece of technology out there right now? Stan, why don't we start with you?
Well, it's going to be tough to answer that with a single sentence, Eric. There is so much going on. You know, I use something, I'll share something with you that has nothing to do with my product, but it helps me in my business every single day. Anyone who's gotten an email from me and we want to get together for a conversation about something, I have a live link in my email signature which says it's a time trade. Just click on this link and my calendar of available times will appear. And it's branded, it's got my logo, and it's, you know, we want to have a conversation about your requirements and your needs, just click an available time. And forever, it used to be, you know, 2 or 3 people on the client side were going to get it together, and, well, I'll have to check their calendars, and I need a couple of people on my end, and we'll have to check our calendars. You send me 2 or 3 times that work for you, and we'll pick one and see if we can make it work. You go back and forth 5 or 6 times doing that. Yeah. And with time trade is just click on a time that's good for you. If it's on my calendar, it's good for me too. And it sends a confirmation email, and it's just all branded, and it takes all of the effort of scheduling meetings down to 0. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. And it's not a franchise technology, but you know what? We're in the business of communication. We hear every year at Franchise Update the need for speed, right? He who gets there first wins. Make it easier for people to communicate. We use texting now as part of our solutions at FRM, so candidates and existing franchisees can have their text messages tracked, not just email. And that's a trend that we need to be mindful of. Things move quickly. You always have to be pushing the envelope on what's coming, evaluate the impact that something can have on your business, and make smart decisions that are going to impact more people positively than those that are going to be naysayers or worried about something new coming along that's going to change their lives negatively.
And just for clarification, Stan, that was Time Trade, correct? TimeTrade.com?
I'm not sure about the .com, but it is Time Trade. If anybody just wants to shoot me an email or a text, I'll be happy to send you a link.
Awesome, awesome. Rebecca, how about you? What's your favorite technology or two out there in the world that's helping your business or a client's business?
So there's 2 things, actually. We made a mental shift a couple of years ago from the idea of selling and marketing our products or our services, and I know a lot of franchisors are doing something similar, and instead educating. So we do a ton of webinars. Absolutely no selling, marketing to it whatsoever. It's just open to anyone, and we just educate, educate, educate. And I can't tell you how many franchisors and franchise brokers we brought on board because we took this different approach of webinars, sometimes video-based, sometimes not video-based. The second thing, and this goes back to what Donnie was saying and Stan is saying about communication, is with FaceTime and Skype and all of these other technologies, folks are enjoying the idea of a face-to-face. It allows us to be transparent. It allows us to, you know, see somebody's eyes and mouth move. So I'm not a big FaceTime person, but I am an iJot person. And this allows me to quickly videotape an email and send it to our resellers and our clients, and then when they open up the email, it's actually a video of me talking to them. Instead of me typing it, I'm speaking it in, and then it goes and it comes up in their email box as a video email, and then they can speak. So they can see me, and it creates a different kind of a relationship when you've actually been able to see someone and see their intentions and feel what they're feeling.
Nice, I like it. Donnie, there was one question as far as your new forum platform tool. Is that a proprietary tool, or was that something that you got off the shelf?
No, it was something that we got off the shelf in that we it's by Envision Power Services, and so we had to build it out internally. We obviously put on a couple of we used a couple of software people that we found but we had to build the kind of nuts and bolts, but the backside and everything else was already there. So
Great.
it was by Envision Power Services, yeah.
And what I want to do is just remind people we've got about 5 minutes left in the session for any questions for our panelists here. I know that there's probably a bunch of questions out there, and if we can't get to them, we'll definitely follow up with people after the call. One question, Rebecca, is just a little bit more detail on the process of selecting franchisees using technology today, and if you can just explain a little bit about how technology has really kind of changed that part of the world, is finding the right franchisee.
Exactly.
You know anything about that?
Nothing, not a thing. So technology has really helped us in this arena to standardize and create some tools that consistently get certain results. So when you're out there looking for a tool, whether it's Zoracle or another tool, please use a tool that will help you in your recruitment process, and make sure that the tool is using a meta-analysis approach. Don't just use a personality test. There's less than a 0.03% correlation between personality and franchisee performance. So use a meta-analysis approach. Make sure it's addressing the cultural issues that Stan was talking about. Make sure it's addressing the stages of growth issues. Make sure it's addressing the values and that this prospective franchisee shares your values. Make sure it also tests core competencies. And equally as important, make sure you get a benchmark, and assess all of your current franchisees based on how well they're doing, top, mid, and low, however you want to divvy it up. But compare your prospective franchisee to those folks. And that will help. And technology allows us to do that extremely quickly and effortlessly, and allows us then to take that same data, and you can use it across the board in other arenas in terms of training and supporting those individuals and onboarding them and helping them ramp up. You'll know, how to use that same technology to go that way. So it simplifies things. It's an important part of the process to make sure your franchisees have the kind of performance you want, and of course that we also like them and they fit into our systems.
And Rebecca, just a quick follow-up on that. How do you guard against, we've all taken personality assessments and, everything from answering questions before an interview and such. And how do you guard against the candidate that is just answering what he or she thinks you want to hear versus how they really are?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can't. And any assessment that tells you they can isn't telling you the truth. You can't. A prospective franchisee is going to answer the questions whatever way they want. So the best way to prevent that is to be upfront with them regarding why they're taking this assessment, that we want what's right and best for them. So we need to know who they are in the raw. There's always going to be folks that fudge it this way or that way. And by the way, a good assessment will actually trigger and let you know when that might be slightly off. I got to tell you a funny one. A couple of years ago, I had a franchisor who was using the tool to assess prospective franchisees, comparing it to the top performers. And our franchise development guys don't like us a whole lot because all of a sudden they're getting a prospective franchisee that might not be a good fit, but the commission is going to pay their mortgage, right? And so they were actually coaching prospective franchisees through the assessment in an effort to have them be a fit. And even with the coaching, it was very difficult for them to get through the assessment and do it. But we can't prevent it. No assessment tool can prevent it. So, good luck with that.
One of the questions we got from an audience member was just a list of technology solutions. Obviously, that list can be very long, and I'll follow up with our panelists after the call and compile that list, and we'll get that out to everybody just in different areas, suggestions. Certainly the IFA's website in their supplier section has lots of great technology providers. There's more technology suppliers, I think, than there are franchisors these days, for sure. So there's lots of great tools out there, and certainly talk to franchisors, and they'll tell you what's working, what's not working. Talk to franchisees, and they'll tell you certainly what's working and what's not working, and where the ROI is. Certainly some things we have to implement. Some things, are nice to haves and not necessarily needs to have. But it's really up to you to make that assessment and do the hard math behind the ROI. Mike, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I know you've got a couple of closing announcements before we wrap up here.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I know there's a couple of questions that we didn't get to, but we're going to follow up with those people offline just to make sure that everything is answered. And thank you to the panelists for a great conversation today. Also, one comment, just wanted to thank Rebecca for iJot. It looks very cool is what the comment says. So thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, and actually, Mike, what I didn't even think of this, but that I would put that same question out to our entire audience right now. If they're using any technology that they think is cool, to just type it into the window and send that along, and we'll compile that whole list so that people can get that.
Hey, Eric,
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Can I just take a parting thank you to the audience for participating in this program. Anyone who knows me, as Eric and Rebecca do, will know that I drink IFA Kool-Aid by the case. And I just want to tip my hat to those of you that are on this call today, because you're here for CFE credit and that you're continuing to self-educate and help franchising be armed with a universe of the highly skilled professionals that are doing the right things the right way. So for your CFP credit and for taking the time to earn it, I want to thank you, and for coming on this call as part of that opportunity and rites of passage, I thank you twice.
Well said.
Thanks, Stan. Absolutely. So, yeah, so just to wrap up, thanks again to everyone. I did shout out a link to a quick feedback survey for this webinar. We'd love to capture some of your thoughts and comments on what you liked from this webinar, what you didn't like, if there was anything. And we'll be following up with another summary email probably tomorrow, early afternoon, and we'll get you a summary for this as well as the other materials from this session. So thanks again, and our next session is on Tuesday next week, Rising Tide, sharing unit level data system-wide with everyone. So it should be a great panel. We look forward to seeing you all there, and thank you, panelists and audience, again for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.